Hello and welcome to episode 53 of the Epic Classroom Podcast. My name is Trevor Muir and I like to talk about teaching, whether it's stories and ideas from my own classrooms or lessons I've learned from other educators. I love to explore ways to help students grow and thrive in school, but also for their educators to thrive as well. And so that's what this podcast is. Whatever you teach or however you serve in schools, how can you lead a more impactful, dynamic, meaningful, and epic classroom? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Always so honored that you listen. I want to talk about creativity this week, and I want to talk about beavers this week, and I want to talk about what happens when we put our heads together and come up with ideas as a group. So we're going to talk about those things, not necessarily in that order. But first, I just got to tell you, right now I am working on a new video. So if you follow my YouTube channel or Facebook or Instagram, you see that I make a lot of videos. It's one of the things I just get so much joy out of doing, and I have done it for quite a few years now. Actually, I think the first video I made in the little teaching world that I live in was back in 2016. And I just made it for any friends who followed me on Facebook that I knew were teachers. I was like, I'm going to make a little video just to share some thoughts. And people liked it. And they're like, you should make more. So I started making more videos and more. And then people started watching them. And it kind of just grew into what this little weird life is for me now, is making videos and writing books and podcasts and getting around the country and sometimes even world to speak about some of this stuff. But for me, a lot of it really started with making videos. I love to do it. I love sometimes to just take my phone and record what's on my mind, or maybe I'll witness something that just blows my mind, and I'll record a short little video about it. Sometimes I go into more detail and I go down to my basement where I've built my own little video studio, and I'll record a little bit more polished of a video. But then every now and then, I've got this friend named Dom who makes unbelievable videos, and he has this incredible equipment, and he's got such a creative eye. Every now and then I invest a little bit of money, and I pay Dom to help me create something really special. And maybe you've seen some of those videos before. The first time I ever worked with Dom was the Epic Classroom book trailer video. And then I did one on collaboration, which was really cool. And then during the pandemic, during COVID, we made some really cool special videos. One about missing the noise in school during lockdown, and another about how, even when really difficult things happen, beauty and grace still occurs in the classroom. And it's so fun every now and then to make something extra special. And right now we are making one that I think is extra special. And we've already filmed 2 scenes of it, and we're going to do the final scene on Friday, where we're actually going to have a classroom of kids and a teacher teaching reading instruction while I'm trying to speak and share the script that I have, while a bunch of first graders are simulating learning how to read. And I just don't know how it's going to go. And I don't even care, because it's so much fun to be creative. It's so fun to take things that are in your brain and somehow work them out and make them visual, with the goal of people understanding it and loving it and feeling inspired by it and getting ideas from it or starting conversation. To me, the whole process is just a blast. And that's why I know no matter what I do in my life and career, I always want to make videos. I don't see that going anywhere. And I just love doing it. And I just thought it'd be fun to share that with you. Is that's just one of my favorite things to do, is make these really special videos. And I think this one is going to be really special. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. The first, or the title of the video, or at least right now, the title of it is, Do We Still Need Teachers? Right? If you have the world's technology, if you have all of the information on the planet at your fingertips, when you have artificial intelligence that can teach reading and writing and math and science, when you have all of this, do we really still need teachers? So that's the big question we ask. I think you know where I'm going to go with it. But I'm really, really excited about that. That's going to be coming out in a few weeks here. So I will be sure to let anybody who listens to the podcast know when that's available, because I think you're going to love it. We are putting a lot into this one. And man, it's fun to just be creative. And that's what I want to talk about in this podcast today, is what happens when we have creative struggle, But then what happens to overcome that struggle when we try to work out our problems with other people, when we collaborate to solve creative issues, it seems like creativity increases. Like, I wrote this script for this video I just told you about, and I had some ideas of what it was going to look like. And then I sat down with Dom, my filmmaker, and I said, all right, so this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And he had ideas that were completely different than mine. And I was like, oh, but I still kind of like this part of mine, but I like where you're going with this. And we molded and matched, and he gave feedback, and I gave feedback. And eventually we came up with something that I think is going to be unbelievable. And it wouldn't be as good as it's going to be. And I'm being there's a little hubris showing, but I'm really excited about this. And I don't think it was going to be that good if it was just me writing the whole thing. I think it needed the collaborative element for it to really thrive. Creativity, right? Coming up with ideas, it's kind of like a stream flowing through a meadow. It gives life to flowers and plants and animals as it widens and stretches and meanders across a valley. But then sometimes beavers stop up a stream with rocks and sticks and trees and mud, and then all of those plants and animals die. Okay, maybe that's a little morbid. But creativity really does move like a stream, and sometimes it does get obstructed, and no amount of willpower can clear the obstruction on its own. Have you ever experienced this yourself? Have you ever had this creative issue and you just can't seem to get past it? It's like those creativity beavers appear, and you've got to find a way to unblock the dam. I like it, and if you've listened to this podcast for a while, I like it when school is authentic. I love giving students real creative tasks that matter to them, right? It's some of the best learning that happens, some of the best student engagement. But inevitably, sometimes when students are working on real stuff that matters to them, they get stuck like the rest of us do, right? And whenever we're trying to exercise creativity beavers get them. Creative struggle is difficult, but it's also important. In this age of technology, students have become so used to instant gratification, accessing information and answers that they need instantly, rather than dealing with the stress and frustration that can come with creative problem solving. So this is one of the reasons I think as educators, teachers, we've got to find ways to teach students how to work through the frustration and how to combine their minds together to solve problems that actually matter, to teach them how to creative problem solve. How do you get rid of those creativity beavers? And I think one of the best ways to do this, to become unstuck, is through collaboration, combining ideas and resources in order to solve real problems. In my class, we always did what I call brain juicing to get unstuck. Brain juicing is large group brainstorming, where any student or groups of students who are struggling to come up with ideas, or maybe they have a unique problem that they're trying to solve, it's where they sit in a circle and they give each other assistance. And these brain juicing sessions are often led by me, the teacher, at least at the beginning of the school year when this is a new concept. And then students juice, that's what we call it, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. We juice our brains, we squeeze them out for different ideas to help classmates. And this basically follows the belief that 2 heads are better than 1. 3 heads are way better than 1. Like, more contributions, more ideas getting shared, more creativity, less creativity beavers. And I find brain juicing, this process of sitting down and creatively brainstorming and problem solving together, I think it's best when it's driven by a clear and recognizable process. By teaching collaborative brainstorming through a protocol, students will learn the key elements that make the protocol successful, right? It'll actually help them whatever their task is in class, but it's also with the hope that someday they're going to know how to do this without the protocol, right? Like, they're going to know how to collaborate and share ideas and get the good stuff out of it, mine the good stuff, juice the ideas from the group, without having to sit down in a circle in the exact way we do it in class, right? Like always, the ultimate goal of a protocol in school is for it to become practice. And so I want to share with you what the protocol of brain juicing looks like in my classroom, and maybe you can do a version of it with your own students. And the first step is clarifying the objective. So start brain juicing with naming the objective of the brainstorming meeting. Maybe students are trying to come up with creative hooks for an introduction paragraph or essay that they're writing, right? They're trying to, I can't think of anything interesting to bring up. I would love some help with this. Or maybe they're developing a website design for a project they're doing, and they want to get feedback specifically on color choices. Whatever the problem is that they're trying to solve, make sure it's clearly known that everyone knows where to focus their attention. So instead of keeping it broad, say, hey, today I want help picking out colors for the website. I want to show you some ideas, and I'm hoping everybody can give me some feedback. Be clear so everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And then speaking of clear, you don't necessarily have to do this, but I think it can be really helpful to assign clear roles to students in the brainstorming process. And again, you don't have to give roles. You can keep it more free-flowing, but having roles, like oftentimes in collaboration, can help keep everyone involved and maximize student engagement. Roles provide each student with a specific function, so everyone has a way to contribute, including those who might otherwise be hesitant to speak up and give feedback during a brainstorming session. And then not to mention, having specific roles also ensure the best brainstorming can take place. For instance, assigning a facilitator can help make sure the brainstorming stays focused and on task. A timekeeper helps make sure brain juicing sessions, they don't run too long. You could assign a devil's advocate who's only trying to poke holes in the ideas that are being shared, or, they're trying to discover an alternative perspective. That's their role. That's a fun one, and it just helps students see things from different perspectives. You could have the role of a summarizer who's taking notes the whole time and then summarizes the brainstorming session at the very end. This can be really helpful. So maybe give students roles. Another tip is to use a timer. Give the presenting group, the group that has the creative struggle, an allotted amount of time to introduce their problem, maybe around just 1 minute, as well as a designated period of time for the brainstormers to share their ideas. This structure, it introduces kind of a sense of urgency. Like, we need to stay focused, and we got to make sure this process doesn't drag on. We only have this short amount of time, so I need to be clear and concise in my presenting, and I need to think quickly about how can I give creative ideas here. Setting time limits helps prevent any one problem from monopolizing the whole session, right? It makes sure that everybody's going to get a chance to give input and receive input on their own problems. But then also, the timer also encourages quick and focused thinking, which to me, I often see it yields fresh ideas and it reduces overthinking. That's one of the parts of brainstorming, problem solving in general, is we can tend to overthink issues. And so when it's tight and concise, students aren't necessarily given time to overthink, and they can just give helpful information. When students know they have a limited window, they're more likely to jump in and contribute. So that's one tip. I also, and this is a big one in collaboration in general, but it is so helpful with brainstorming, is to teach productive language. Productive brainstorming is helped by healthy language. Instead of students saying things like, you should do this, or I don't like that idea, which might come natural to them like that, right? Like giving commands or just sharing their opinions. We can teach students to use language that's more likely to be received. Because let's be honest, you telling me you should do this, it's like, well, how do you know what I should do? What makes you the expert on what I should do? Or you saying I don't like this, it's like, well, that's a little harsh, right? When you start with negativity, that just makes me want to shut down. And so we can teach students better language that's more receptive for the group seeking solutions, right? They could say, I wonder if you could do this, or I suggest using a different color because, by using words like I wonder or phrases like I suggest, the brainstormers are showing humility and not having all the answers, and instead they have ideas that might be helpful or not, right? The group seeking solutions, they don't have to use all of the suggestions or ideas that are provided. But the truth is, people are much more receptive to advice that is grounded in humility. So teach students how to develop that type of language and how to use it. The next step is encouraging small steps. Part of developing problem-solving skills is growing endurance for the tedium that can come with creativity, right? Brainstorming, creativity, it takes effort. It can be draining. So it's important for students to know that they don't need to solve an entire problem or project all in one sitting. Creativity takes time. So encourage students to set the goal of moving just one step forward during brain juicing. Walk away with at least one new idea to improve your work. but don't feel like it has to all be accomplished in one session. This is more doable. This is more realistic. It relieves some of that pressure, and now students actually usually give more than just one step because they know they only have to give one step. They only have to move forward a little bit, which in turn relieves the pressure and allows them to really move forward with big ideas. And then lastly, for the protocol, is making sure that we debrief and reflect after each session, right? Like at the end of a brain juicing session, have students share one new insight or idea that they gained. This reinforces the benefits of collaboration. It lets students recognize patterns in the help that they gave and received. It's helping them see, like, oh, this was helpful, right? And I'm telling you, I have seen so many students do this protocol and really, really enjoy it. It is like alchemy sometimes. I sat down with a group of teachers yesterday at a Catholic school here in Michigan, and we were just brainstorming together, and we only had 1 hour to be together. That was the time we had contracted, so I was like, oh boy, how much are we actually going to get planned and come up with in an hour? And so we sat down, I ran through a couple concepts with them, and then I said, all right, so let's come up with some ideas together. And I'm telling you, friends, by the end of that hour, I was blown away what we came up with as a group. Just the ideas were flowing and bouncing around, and people had pushback on some, and so we altered ideas and revised. And by the end of it, we had a fully planned unit conceptualized. We came up with this amazing project idea where the whole school is going to adopt composting, and kids were going to learn math and science and reading and writing and all of this stuff. And it was all developed in an hour, and it happened in a format like the one we're talking about here. And the point of it wasn't just to develop that unit. For me, it was for them to see, like, look what happens when as a staff of teachers, you sit down together and we actually brainstorm and problem solve together what can actually come up with, right? Teaching can be so isolating sometimes. Sometimes it's so contained to the classroom, your own classroom, that you don't collaborate enough with other people. And sometimes that's our limited capacity to collaborate with others. That's why I love it that the school brought me in to actually facilitate this type of collaboration. But sometimes it's because we don't realize how beneficial it can actually be. And then it's the same with students. But with these teachers yesterday, at the end of it, I was very clear to call out, like, look what we just accomplished because we were collaborating together. It's like, can you do this without me? And of course they can. And they all realize they can. I was like, great. So, like, let's start making a habit of spending more time coming up with ideas and sharing problem solving, all of this together. Let's brain juice more often, not just in this PD setting. It's the same with students, creating space to reflect on how this was beneficial with the aim of this protocol becoming practice. When students can identify the strength of collaborative problem solving, they'll start using it outside of the brain juicing protocol. So, a designated reflection time helps reinforce the value of this activity. And what's really cool is that students are first and foremost here, they're getting creative help, right? Like whatever their problem is in class, whether it's a project or a paper they're writing or a social issue, whatever their problem is, they're getting help with it, right? Which is helping them with whatever problem they're working on. So like there's a benefit. However, they're also learning a vital skill, which is to lean on others for help. I've seen it so many times with teachers. I've seen it so many times with students that when we put our heads together, the best stuff comes out of it. The very best projects and learning experiences I've ever designed as a teacher. And I've told you about some of them before. My World War II project, my refugee project, the big debates that I've led, all of these things, they weren't designed just by me. They were born with groups of people around me. It was fostered in community, right? The best stuff I've ever done wasn't just me. It was with people who have a vested interest in me and my work. And that's why brain juicing works best with students when they have a vested interest in each other. When you as a teacher can create a community setting in your classroom, when students are working on tasks that matter to them with other people who have similar goals, when that's happening, that's where the best stuff happens, right? That's the best creativity. That's where we expel the creativity beavers. So maybe give students tasks or projects that they're working on together, or at least are moving in the same direction. When they're helping each other brains juice or solve creative problems, you're just going to see that it's beneficial for everyone. And to me, if I'm just being completely honest, as I record this the week after the big election, to me, this is what our country could use a healthy dose of. Putting our heads together and working together to achieve common good. This is what our society, it's what our communities need. And so why don't we help our students develop that skill so that they can use it the rest of their lives? Oh, one more thing. To make brain juicing a little more epic, I always love to bring in a jug of juice for students to drink during it. And I always like to float raspberries in the cups that look like little brains. So that's some real brain juicing. And it also makes a really great conversation starter when your principal walks in the room. Yep, my kids are drinking and eating brains. So there we go, friends. That is brain juicing. That is collaborative problem solving. If you try this out, if this is something you're like, oh, I want to do this with my students, let me know. I would love to hear how it goes. I'd love to feature it on social media if you're interested in that. I think it's good to share good things happening in the classroom, and that's what this podcast is. And hopefully that's what the bulk of my work in this education world is based on, is sharing good stuff that I find helpful in my own work, stuff that other people find helpful. That's what this podcast is. So thank you for listening to it. My name is Trevor Muir, and this has been episode, I think, 53 of the Epic Classroom Podcast. I'll talk to you next time.